The current terror of the meta is describable only in one unpronounceable word. The Ynnari. Well, I guess I can't pronounce it, but it's spelled stupidly. Anyway, this is the Eldar. The Eldar Codex itself is actually very balanced, and probably for the first time in Games Workshop history, just like a quality codex with just really cool stuff, and none of it's really all that overpowered. The Ynnari detachment itself is definitely stronger than everything else in the game, which is actually a really cool thing, because currently the meta is exceptionally balanced, but we have to figure out how to beat the Ynnari, because these guys are actually crushing tournament after tournament. And I feel relatively uniquely qualified on how to talk about how to defeat Ynnari, seeing as I just suffered my very first loss to Ynnari, which is kind of amazing when you go through how many games against Ynnari I've had. So I've actually been very successful into it, and so I figured I was going to share some of the things that I've been doing so that can influence some of your games as well. Now, not all of the advice I'm going to go through is going to apply to every single army. So every single army, every single build that you're doing is going to have to adapt slightly differently to the Ynnari in particular. Now, before we start breaking everything down here, what are we going to talk about in today's video? Well, we're going to talk about the strengths of the Ynnari specifically. We're going to talk about the weaknesses of the Ynnari, the game plan that the Ynnari has, the game plan that you have, key units you got to be aware of, countering their abilities, and what armies actually have the natural strengths to counter them. Because some armies are going to struggle more than others, and there's just no doubt about it. But before we get into any of this, my first and biggest piece of advice is whenever you are going into a matchup and you're not sure how to play it, play your game plan. Don't worry about what your opponent's going to do. If you have a good big game plan made for your army and you fulfill that, that will always put the pressure on your opponent to disrupt your game plan. So you always want to enact your will on the table, as opposed to constantly worrying and stressing about how to deal with your opponent's willpower. So if you just start with that single approach, you're instantaneously going to increase in your win rate against basically everything in the game. So start there. All right, now let's break this down. And if you like this advice, by the way, like button, subscribe, share with your friends, join the members only Discord. I'm actually closing the free section because I just find that all of our communication is in the member side anyway. So it's all going to be in the member side. You can join for like $5 on YouTube or something like that. So join in YouTube, join in Coffee, and we'll talk about tactics, and you can join in our TTS leagues as well. So let's get into this bad boy. What are the problems that Ynnari really face us with? Well, first off, you have to deal with the initial general problems that all Eldar are going to have, which is going to be they've got the four battle-focused tokens they get to use every single battle round. And that is, each one of these battle-focused tokens can be used on one unit, with a small exception. They can get a D6 reactive move after being shot. So a unit is shot, they get to move D6. I think it's D6 plus 1, actually. Here, let me just actually add that in. Whatever. And then you've got a D6 plus 1 inches of added normal movement to a vehicle. So if a vehicle has a 14-inch normal move, well, suddenly now they've got D6 plus 1 inches of normal movement. They've got a reactive move to a fallback. So if an opponent falls back from the unit, well, then you get to move D6 1 inches. They've got a plus 2 inches to movement, and that can be used multiple times on basically any unit in the entire codex. And then you've got a 6-inch pylon consolidation token, which is great. And then lastly, you've got a very powerful token that can be used to just say, you can't overwatch me for the rest of the turn. Now, that's all Eldar. Now, what about the Ynnari specifically? The Ynnari themselves just take all of these really crazy good and powerful movement shenanigans and turn it up to the 10th degree. All right, so nth degree or whatever they say. I don't know. So the first of these three abilities is the lethal intent, and this is the most problematic and most powerful part, and we got to figure out how to counter it. Lethal intent is at the end of you being the Ynnari's opponent, shooting phase, they get to do a normal move with any unit in their army, so long as the Ynnari player lost a unit in your shooting phase. That's freaking powerful. And now notice what it says is a normal move. It is not capped. And this is really what's causing the majority of the problems for Ynnari from what I have found, okay? So because of this, what'll happen is your opponent will, or you might kill a unit of warp spiders, and then the Ynnari player will do a normal move, and they'll combine it with their plus 2 inches to move of a wave serpent, and move the wave serpent, 16 inches, or perhaps even also give it the D6 plus 1 inches of added normal movement, and make it go like 21 inches in your opponent in your turn, and then in their turn, they'll do that more normal move again, and then disembark fire dragons, kill everything. So you can see immediately how that's a big issue. Then the other two abilities that they have is one, they've got the lethal reprisal, which is any unit in their army that is under starting strength, they can just give one of them fights first. Very powerful. Now, it sounds better than it actually is, because when you look at Eldar combat units, or Ynnari combat units at least, typically the units that are scary in combat, being the Ivrain Incubi Blob, they already have fights first because they're going to have the Vizark. The Howling Banshees already have fights first because Howling Banshees have fights first. So this ability actually, even though it sounds amazingly strong, there's just generally not any units that they're really going to need to use it on outside of maybe the Incarn, and we'll talk about the Incarn later. And then lastly, they have the Lethal Surge, and this is a D6 normal move after an enemy falls back into engagement range. So let me explain. You have a unit of Howling Banshees, and you've got a Impulsor. Your Impulsor falls back. Those Howling Banshees can immediately move D6 plus 1 inches and can end in engagement range. That is pretty dang strong. So strong, in fact, that it causes a lot of problems for people. It really screws up people's movement phases, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's basically the whole story. These are the three abilities that the Ynnari has. They also have a bunch of strats, and we'll talk about some of the strats as well. So what are these strengths? These are the main problems that they're presenting you. Now, what are the just general strengths of the army? General strengths of the army are going to be just crazy movement shenanigans. We basically just went over all the movement shenanigans, although we'll go more into detail. They've got lots of diverse firepower. They have these units called Dark Reapers, which have great Strength 10, AP 2, Ignore Cover, Damage 3 firepower. They've got Fire Dragons that are amazing anti-tank units. They have fantastic scout and infiltration units, so in the form of striking scorpions, which both have infiltrate and scout 7, and they're amazing at clearing chaff. Those things are really, really great for move blocking, so you have to account for move blocking in the Eldar army. They've got hyper MSU, meaning minimum size units. Basically, every unit is optimized for 5-man squads, which means you can run into a Eldar Ynnari's particular army that has 20 plus units, which is kind of crazy. They've got insane range on their units. So those Dark Reapers, I think they're 48-inch range. Warp Spiders might only be 12-inch flamers, but they move 24 inches, right? So there's just lots and lots of range where they can touch you from basically anywhere on the battlefield. They have Fights First on Demand, which we already spoke about. They have fantastic stratagems. And actually a lot of other detachments, the stratagems might not be considered that incredible, but for this detachment, they're great. One of them is they get to sticky an objective on death. So when you kill one of their Ynnari units, that unit can then sticky the objective, which that is traditionally the bane of Eldar's existence, is how the heck do they hold primary? Because they're elf bodies and they die to a stiff sneeze, which that's just kind of the way it is. So when they can actually just sack units to get sticky objectives, which is very, very, very powerful. They also have an ability to actually shoot back into you. So if you were to casually try to shoot a few pistols, I don't know, a Dark Reaper unit, and you kill one Dark Reaper, well, now they can shoot back at you as if there was their shooting phase, which can be brutal. So they've got some really decent strats. But overall, when you look at their damage profile, they have excellent damage into elite units. So if you are an elite army that has a bunch of flat 3 damage, flat 3 wound infantry, whether you're Custodes, if you're spamming certain types of Gravis Marines, a lot of times when you're playing like EC nowadays, or even the new upcoming Death Guard, I'd be willing to bet your Eldar are really, really efficient, especially your Ynnari are really efficient at killing those types of units. So they excel at killing elite units. They're also pretty dang decent at chaff clearing when you look at some of their squads. So for example, if they're taking Wind Riders, that can just clear chaff like it's no one's business. If they're taking Warp Spiders, that can clear chaff like it's no one's business. So they have a lot of damage into good elite, great damage into chaff, and they have one unit in particular which is really good into monsters and vehicles. That is going to be, of course, the Fire Dragons. So what are the weaknesses? They've got all these super big strikes. What are their weaknesses? Well, guys, they're elf bodies. They die. They die to pistols. They die to orc shooting. They die to bolters. They die to everything and anything. It is super easy to kill Eldar models. One of the big problems that you can come across when you're running into Eldar is their Exarchs or their Sergeants have 2 wounds. So a lot of times, if you're just dealing like 1 damage, they might take 1 wound on the Exarch to not diminish the strength of the unit, right? So that can be a bit of an issue that they have. But guys, seriously, Eldar bodies just die. This is one of the armies where you do just want to punch them on the in the chin because they fold. They fold. Now, outside of fire dragons, they also tend to lack individual unit punch. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is they tend to not have the ability to have one unit wipe one unit. Now, Howling Banshees might be really good into elite infantry because they get the anti-infantry 2 up, their AP 2, damage 2. The Exarch has an AP 3, damage 3 weapon, and if it's attached to the Autarch, they really start punching up. But all of their models actually only have like 2 attacks each for a Howling Banshees, which is their best melee unit, really. So you could really drown them just in models. So they don't necessarily have this unit kills this unit. What Ynnari and Eldar in general tend to do is they tend to, and there's always exceptions, of course, Wind Riders, for example, but what they tend to do is they tend to need unit A, B, and C to combine to murder your unit. And that's how they tend to have to do it. So a lot of times you can tank firepower or melee power from a single individual unit, which is something that you can use to your benefit. So just going along with this, that means that stat checks can be big issues. And we're going to talk about some of the stat checks that work really, really well into the Eldar. All right. So what are some of the combos that the Ynnari in particular like to do? Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but they can have a Wave Serpent that moves 21 inches in your turn at the end of your shooting phase, assuming you killed one of their squads. That Wave Serpent itself can then move up to 21 inches in the Ynnari player's turn. So that's approximately 42 inches of movement that might have gone in one turn without charging. And then it can disembark 2 squads of fire dragons that can then be within melter range of any unit in the game within, basically anywhere. And that's a lot. Like that's a lot of movement, and that's a big problem. They can use this reactive move on anything, but that's a big combination that a lot of people don't really pay attention to, is just how dang fast their transports, and then by transport nature, the guys inside of it, or the fire dragons, can really be. So a lot of times in Ynnari, they really can just get their anti-tank wherever the anti-tank needs to be. Now, the thing that you have to understand about that is that means that those fire dragons are now dead. One of the biggest problems people have when they're playing against Ynnari is they become so threatened by all of the things Ynnari can do, they don't stop to think about what would the Ynnari player actually want to do. Because anytime the Ynnari player exposes anything, it's going to instantly die. Like, they are the easiest to kill units basically in the entire game. One grenade strat and a few pistols will kill basically any unit in the entire army, which is kind of crazy when you think about it that way. Now, they also, because they can use their reactive moves, so if you shoot an enemy unit, they can, use that to embark inside their transports, right? So let's say I have a unit of fire dragons, and in the shooting phase, I shot a unit of warp spiders and killed them. Well, the fire dragons at the end of your turn can then, hop inside of a Wave Serpent inside of a transport, and then you can't charge them. That's a big problem. They can also reactive move into combat with fights first. So you have to be really, really paying attention to that. There's basically just tons and tons of these little movement shenanigans that you have to be aware of. It's a problem. All right, now let's look at some of the individual units that the Ynnari might have. So this is probably the big one that it doesn't carry the codex, but it definitely enables the codex, and it enables this detachment in particular. Your fire dragons. Typically, they're going to be taken in 5-man squads. I think they actually have to be taken 5-man squads. If I'm not, maybe it doesn't matter. They're only taken 5-man squads. For the purposes of this video, because that's all you're going to see competitively. What they do is they're effectively eradicators. They all have a Melta gun. That's Melta 3, Strength 9, AP 4. And they reroll hit rolls, wound rolls, and damage rolls into monsters and vehicles. When you combo this with the Wave Serpent that we spoke about earlier, you get insane speed, and this unit can legitimately murder anything. And the Exarch can have a Melta 6 weapon. So don't be surprised or don't be super stunned when one squad split fires and picks up 2 tanks. It can happen. I've seen one squad split fire and pick up 3 tanks. It is just a crazy amount of damage. They only have a range of 12, which is the trick, which is why they need the Wave Serpent to really get into engagement range, or into fire melter range. And they are more or less suicide bombers, because the second they activate, you're going to get to kill them for free. So there are limitations on the fire dragon's strength, but you have to be aware of what they can do. Like, Melter 3 is a very big deal on those things. Then you have to understand how the way Howling Banshees work. These squads, it's going to be a 5-man squad. You can take them in 10s, but you're going to basically always see them in 5-mans with the Autarch, which is important. But they have AP2 damage 2, and then the Exarch will have AP3 damage 3. They hit on 2s, but they're only going to have 2 attacks each with anti-infantry 3 up. So they're going to be murdering tough to elite infantry, where they really start to struggle, though, into, like, your chaff, right? Now, the Ynnari also, of course, have the ability to, like, reroll hit rolls of 1 with a stratagem, or full rerolls to hit. There's some qualifier for that, but it's okay. So they can definitely hit at a very high ratio, just off of the nature of the hit on 2s already, and they can also get rerolls if they need to. But they only have so limited attacks. If a full squad is going to get you 8 attacks with the damage 2 and 3 attacks with the damage 3. If you have a 10-man squad, the chances of you dying to that is little to none, because they're going to roll A1 somewhere, or A2 on the wound roll. Or if you're not an infantry squad, let's say you're mounted, or if you're, a tank or a monster, you just really don't have much to worry about at all. Then you got to understand the way the Dark Reapers work. The Dark Reapers have like a 48-inch range, and their ballistic skill 3-up, which cannot be modified. They ignore all hit and ballistic skill modifiers. It's going to be strength 10, AP2, ignore cover, damage 3. So this is amazing to elite infantry. So you have to understand they've got super good long range. They've got super good short range. But it's all really tailored towards elite. Most people know what Warp Spiders do at this time, which is why I didn't include it. Then for the Ynnari particularly, we have to talk about the Incarn. The Incarn is a bit of an issue. So it's not nearly as oppressive as it was in the Index times, but it's still pretty darn good. It's got very decent melee. It's got a very decent flamer. And once per turn, it will teleport to where one of the Eldar players' units was when it was just destroyed. You have to watch out for this. So this is something that I know about. I counter all the time. I just don't kill the enemy units until I am prepared to until after I kill the Incarn, if I'm trying to kill the Incarn. You have to prioritize the Incarn if it's your goal to kill the Incarn. Because you have to understand, the second you kill anything else in the Eldar player's army, they're just going to make the Incarn disappear and go over there, and then your army's not going to be in position to kill the Incarn anymore. Now, I recently ran into an interesting issue this past weekend when I was playing out a major, where I ran into a scenario where the Incarn was able to teleport, which I had never run into. Now, when you read rules, it's obvious, of course it should work this way, but I had never experienced it, so I wasn't expecting it. So it's effectively what happened, and I just want all of you to learn from my mistakes, because this is what gave me my first loss against Ynnari. I had charged an Incarn with a unit of knobs and a warboss, and they were going to wipe this thing. It was going to die. There's basically no way it was going to survive. At the same time, on the other end of the field, I had charged a unit of Breakaboys into a squad of Howling Banshees. Now, in my brain, algorithmically, Howling Banshees have fights first. How do you counter fights first? You use fight on death. Makes sense. So the Howling Banshees fought first into my Breakaboys. I fought on death with my Breakaboys, killing the Howling Banshees. But the second the Howling Banshees died to my fight on death, now the Incarn teleported away, and my knobs with the Warboss were basically standing in the middle of no man's land, more or less just say, "What's up, homie? What's up?" and more or less that lost the game. Now, it's not like there's no gotcha there. It's just a scenario that neither me or my opponent had ever experienced. Was I'm gonna teleport based off of a fight on death kill. I'm never gonna fall for that again. I'm never gonna not pay attention to that again. But it's something that I want you guys to understand. Anytime a unit dies once per turn in the Eldar players, for the Eldar players, right? It's going to be in your turn, but yeah. Anyway, very big deal. You have to deal with the Incarn, and if you don't, it can run through you. Fights first, guys. You have to understand how to deal with fights first. If you don't know how to deal with fights first, I have an entire video dedicated to dealing with fights first. But I just want to kind of break down some of the fights first units that they have access to. They've got Ivrain with the Vicearch and the Incubi. This is a anti-infantry bomb that's just gonna murder things. It can even pop like transports and things like this. You've got the Howling Banshees with or without the Autarch when leading them. This is a squad that has a large amount of anti-elite infantry power. Anything injured. Typically, this means the Incarn, but occasionally you might see them use this on striking Scorpions, who happen to be very anti chaff. But the Incarn is kind of anti-everything, not really, but it can make it really hard to charge. So you got to look out for all these fights first. So how do you handle fights first? Just doing it real fast, but seriously, check out my video on defeating fights first if you want more details. You got to utilize out-of-phase mortals, meaning tank shocks. Like if I am charging a unit of Howling Banshees and they're going to fight first, well, if I just tank shock it and I deal 4 mortal wounds, suddenly there's 2 Howling Banshees in there, and I don't care that they fight first. I can throw grenades at them, 1 CP and suddenly 3 Howling Banshees die to a grenades. Okay, now I can charge them and not care that they're going to fight first. It just is what it is, right? The Incarn, he's left on 3 wounds. Charge him, tank shock him. If you deal 3 wounds, well, it doesn't matter. He dies. He can't fight first. You can also tag them with units. So let's say I don't have tank shock, but I wanted to charge my, I don't know, Rhino or a truck or something like that into the Howling Banshees, basing the Howling Banshees. And then I also charge the Banshees with another unit, but I didn't have to base to most of the unit because most of the unit is now base to base with the transport. Well, they're going to have to fight the transport unless they're also engaged with my other unit that charged them, which you can sort it out on the way that you pile in to kind of screw with your opponent, which can limit the amount of attacks that come into the unit that you care about when your opponent fights first. And then, of course, the trusty, the old reliable fight on death. If you have fight on death, that kind of basically counters fights first because your opponent will fight first, you'll fight on death, murder them. Everyone dies, everyone's happy. All right, let's talk about the Ynnari game plan. Here's the deal. They have amazing abilities, and we've spoken about them, those lethal intents, all those things. And I'm going to talk more in detail about the lethal intent in the next slide, which is the reactive move at the end of the shooting phase. They've just got these incredibly strong movement-based abilities. They've got pretty good killing power, all these things. But most of their really terrifying abilities proc off of you killing their models. Here lies the dilemma. Do you kill their models and then let them use their super powerful abilities? Or do you not kill their models in the shooting phase and then they don't get to use their super powerful abilities? Well, there's going to be different theories on this. My advice is if you can kill more than 1 unit in the shooting phase, shoot. Kill everything you can in the shooting phase. A lot of times what Ynnari will do is they'll give you just 1 unit that you can kill, and they accept that as a willing sacrifice to enable them to have that free move at the end of the shooting phase. If you can get multiple units dead in the shooting phase, kill those units, accept the fact that they're going to get to use their double move and all their abilities. Be like, cool, you get to use your abilities, but your army is now deplenished. Because Ynnari requires so much the teamwork of their individual units working together that once they start losing models, it doesn't matter how strong their abilities are, they really are severely going to be injured. Think of it this way, okay? All right? The Ynnari players in front of you, you're like, all right, cool, I'm not going to shoot anything, so you don't get to use any of your abilities. And the Eldar player goes, great, so none of my models die, and I'm just going to kill you in my turn. So they're super happy to not use their abilities, because then their models aren't dead. If you're a melee-based army, of course you don't have to worry about this, because you're never going to shoot them anyway, and you're just going to be charging everything, so you don't really have to worry about that, right? But if you are a army that tends to rely on shooting, or you've just got a huge shooting element, bro, you have to eliminate the enemy. If you don't eliminate the enemy and you spend so much time thinking about, oh, but what if he gets to do this move? Guys, he's gonna get to move. Like, there's just nothing. Even if the Wave Serpent, the difference between moving 42 and a disembark and moving only a mere 21 with a disembark, they're still going to get to wherever they need to go, right? So even if they don't get to use their abilities, they're still going to manage to be where they need to be. So I recommend you just punch them in the freaking jaw, murder half of their army, and then let them have their abilities. Now, another thing that you really need to understand, and this is just general advice against Eldar, overwatch the first available thing that is useful. Let's say they have 4 units, all of which are viable Overwatch targets, like Warp Spiders, Howling Banshees, whatever, but there's 1 unit in particular you desperately want to overwatch. Let's pretend it's a unit of Howling Banshees, and you desperately want to overwatch this unit. Well, you got to imagine and understand that your opponent has battle focus tokens. So what this means is they will be able to just say, nope, you're not allowed to overwatch me. So if you wait and you pass up the opportunity to overwatch this unit and overwatch this unit and overwatch this unit, and then it's finally down to the last unit and your opponent is moving them and you're about to say, yes, I'm going to overwatch, all your opponent has to do is say, I'm going to spend 1 battle focus token, and now you don't get to overwatch this unit. And since I've already moved all of my previous units, you get to overwatch nothing. And it is the worst feeling in the world. Your stomach gets all knotted up. You're like, oh, I'm totally screwed. I should have overwatched earlier. And the answer was, yeah, you should have. So basically, when you have a reasonable Overwatch, whether you have Flamers or you got like a Gladiator Reaper with sustained hits against infantry, whatever, or you got some rerolls or lethal sustains, whatever, any good Overwatch that you have, just use it. Start getting rid of their units because they drop like flies once you get rid of their units. They need the combinations of units to actually pull off all of their damage combos and get their actions and hold their primaries. Just get rid of their freaking units. There are certain circumstances, and I'm about to talk about it right now, where you can't allow them to use their lethal intent move, and that's the thing that at the end of their shooting phase they get to do their normal move. So I'm going to talk about those scenarios right now. All right, this is the normal move at the end of your shooting phase. The Eldar player gets to move at the end of your shooting phase. This is the scariest thing about Ynnari. We just talked about how I personally recommend let them have the ability. Let them do the double move and just kill their army so that it doesn't matter that they get the double move. But there are certain scenarios where you kind of have to deny them this ability to use the double move. One, they can use this double move. They can use this move at the end of your shooting phase to score primary that they otherwise were not going to be able to score. And if that is a very big deal, let's say the score is really close, and let's say it's supply drop and it's like, oh, I don't know, round 5 and they're trying, or round 4, you're going into them going first. Well, if you kill something, a warp spider unit might just move 12 inches to be on the supply drop objective, and then suddenly they score 15 points. You have to consider that. It can be used for denying the critical charge. So let's say you've got one charge, and if you make this charge, you're going to win the game. Well, if you also kill something that's shooting, then your opponent can just say, hey, the unit that you have to charge, I'm just going to do a normal move and make that an impossible charge now. Then you could just lose the game. So if there is a critical charge, maybe that's a time when you might consider not killing a unit in shooting. If you've got 12 charges to make and none of them are really critical, kill things in shooting. Who cares if they deny you one of the charges? You're going to make all of the other charges, right? It can be used to deny a secondary. Let's say you're trying to score area denial, and if you get these 5 points from this area denial, you're going to win the game. But if you kill a unit in shooting, they can just do a move and put a unit within 3 inches, and let's say you have advanced at the end of your shooting phase, of course, and let's say you've advanced, so now you can't charge them. They denied your 5 points for area denial. That's a big problem. So if it's a critical secondary, if it's a critical primary, if it's a critical charge, these are reasons to not kill a unit in shooting and deny them the ability to use the lethal intent movement. They can also use the lethal intent to position for really critical and powerful heroic interventions. It can also just simply be used to move a unit much faster up the board, like in the terms of the 21-inch wave serpent full of fire dragons that I can't explain. It's always a strong and good ability that they have. You have to choose when to accept that they're going to get to use the ability and when to deny it. But remember, when you deny it, what that means is it means you're not killing any Eldar in shooting, which is a big deal. Like, you kind of got to kill Eldar, right? And just trust me on this one, all. The Eldar player is generally going to be very happy if you choose to not kill any of their units so that they don't get to use their rules. Because that means all their units are alive and they're just going to continue to harass you and take little bite-sized chunks out of you every turn. I tend to just accept that he's going to get into a really good position, and it's served me exceptionally well over more than 25 games at this point against Ynnari. I've lost the one that happened this weekend, and it was because of that Ynnari, or the incarnate interaction, which I explained earlier in this video, and I will never lose to that again because now I understand that concept. And that's how we grow as players. You experience certain things, you put it in the memory banks, you know how to deal with that scenario later in the future. All right. Now, what armies have a natural advantage against the Ynnari? Well, first and foremost, in my opinion, I think orcs have an amazing natural advantage into the Ynnari because they do not have good profiles into us. Warp spiders, strength 4, AP 1, damage 1. If I'm playing Warhorde, I've got -1 to be wounded on my orc infantry. They're just not going to get through my orcs. Let's say Dark Reapers, if they want to do their blast profile, it's not that effective into me. If they want to do their big gun profile, it's not blast profile, sorry, it's just like a multi-shot profile. If they want to do their big gun profile, okay, you're going to kill 3 boys for my orc squad. What do I care about that? Howling Banshees, they're going to charge in, I'm going to fight on death. I'm going to charge them, they fight first, I'm going to fight on death. It basically has all the counters that Ynnari really, really hates. If you're mounted like my army is in trucks, they're going to have to pop your trucks first. Okay, so now the fire dragons are going to have to expose themselves simply to kill trucks, which means that you just push forward and kill everything. So orcs have a huge natural advantage because of the innate profile. Their chaff is already T5, which is a big freaking problem because all of their units that are good at killing chaff are all going to be strength 4. And there lies the difference. Chaos Knights have a very good game plan into Ynnari, assuming that they are smart and they take the Havoc Launchers, which are going to be the indirect blast guns. If they also have those Havoc Launchers, Ynnari is going to be hard-pressed to do anything against them. Now, as Chaos Knights players in particular, you're going to have to accept that the Ynnari player will get Fire Dragons in position and will be able to murder some of your big knights. It's going to happen. There's nothing you can do to stop it. But if you just continue to hammer and murder their squads every single turn with all of your indirect and just continuously push up and push their faces in, they only at maximum have 3 of these Fire Dragon squads. You're going to pop a 4-up invulnerable on one of your knights. You're going to try to skew the math. Every time a Fire Dragons activate, they're going to pick up 1 to 2 little knights. Do your best to only let them do it once or twice. If you do that, I mean, the game is pretty much in your hands, assuming you're just constantly hammering them. So keep it up. Grey Knights have quite a good advantage, whether you're playing the original Index or the Wartbane Task Force, because 1 unit of Purifiers can pick up like 6 different squads. Y'all have to forgive me. We got a little war boss in the background who's about to have a feeding. She's turning green, and she's declaring the Wa as she's begging Mother for food. She's saying, "Mother, you're starving me." All right, she's good now. So let's keep going. So Grey Knights have a very big advantage into these Eldar players. 1 Grey Knight One Grey Knight Librarian Liberator, Librarian and Terminator armor can just point a Vortex of Doom with a 3-inch deep strike in the Index and say, "Bye, entire Eldar unit." That's a big problem for them. In the Wartbane Task Force, you can 6-inch deep strike down with Purifiers, split fire, pick up 2 units, charge another unit. 1 Nemesis Dread Knight can overwatch the crap out of a squad, split fire or shoot their flamers into any unit, auto pick it up. So Grey Knights have a great game plan into the Eldar, or the Ynnari in particular. Admech, there's just too many bodies. If you're playing Skirari Hunter Cohort and you've got the 5-up invuln and stealth everywhere, it's too many bodies. You could have Ruststalkers go out and just crush everything in the entire game. Admech, weirdly enough, a lot of people think Admech sucks, but it's really strong into Ynnari. And then honestly, I also suspect, and I don't have empirical data for this one, but I certainly suspect that new World Eaters are going to be quite an issue for the Eldar players. I think it's going to be wreaking havoc on them. I think Eldar is going to be exceptionally good into things like your Custodes. It's going to be exceptionally good into things like your Death Guard. It's going to be exceptionally good into things like, honestly, Space Marines, which is one of the reasons why it's so darn dangerous. So these armies, though, have natural advantages into the Ynnari. Now, let's do a quick review, and then I'm going to let you go for the day because this video's gotten quite freaking long. All right, good. I was just checking to make sure it's actually recording. That would have been a nightmare if I wasn't recording. All right, so here's a quick review. Pick and choose. Are you going to give them their abilities, or are you going to give them their units? Are you going to kill their units or not? I err on the side of just kill their freaking units, unless there's one of those specific scenarios which we laid out earlier, where it's better to deny their ability. Overwatch the units that they give you. Don't hold out for the best Overwatch, because your opponent can always just turn Overwatch off on one of their units. So just take what they give you. Murder their units. When their units die, their army falls apart. Just keep killing. Always assume that they move 2 inches further for pre-measuring threat ranges, because remember, they've got battle focus tokens that can just add 2 inches of movement to any unit in the army. Anticipate fight first in any particular location. So if you're charging in with Space Marine scouts against striking scorpions, and one of those striking scorpions died to a bolter shot, expect the striking scorpions to fight first. So you have to plan on this. Anything that's going to be under starting strength can have fights first. Banshees always have fights first. Ivrain and the Incubi with the Visearch always have fights first. If the Incarn is injured, it's going to have fights first. Just expect these things. Out of phase mortals are brutal to Eldar. And when I say brutal, I mean devastating. And honestly, any mortal output is going to be devastating into the Eldar. Whether that's Grey Knights, whether that's going to be the freaking, I think it's the Plasmancer from I think it's the Plasmancer from Necrons, who has the 4d6 thing. Just murders. Grenade stratagem, tank shock, squig bombs, race when they do the flyover mortals. Anything that does the flyover mortals. There are tons of ways to get mortal output in this game, and it obliterates the Eldar. So don't be afraid to use those mortals. It is a just brutal thing for them. Even bad guns tend to perform exceptionally well into Eldar, because it's all T3 models. Shoot them. You have bolters, shoot them. A unit of intercessors is actually terrifying to Eldar, so don't be afraid to just blast. And if there is an Incarn in the army, it needs to be dealt with in one shot, and you need to deal with it first when it's time to deal with it. So if it's turn 1, that doesn't mean you have to deal with the Incarn turn 1. But when it's your turn, when you have decided this is the turn that I am going to deal with the Incarn, you need to make sure that your focus is on killing the Incarn. And if you could do more damage by killing everything else in the army, then don't focus on killing the Incarn and kill everything else in the army, right? But if you've decided that you're going to deal with the Incarn and you're going to put yourself in such a position to deal with the Incarn, make sure you deal with the Incarn and you don't kill another unit first, because then you can do what I did and allow the Incarn to just, win the game because you made a poor decision. So there it is, guys. This is how to beat the Ynnari. Hopefully you found this valuable. If you did, let me know in the comments down below. If you didn't, let me know in the comments down below. And with that, I'm going to take off. So crump on. Bye-bye.